This baby isn't yours. The maid's daughter's whisper to the billionaire changed everything. He ordered a DNA test, and what it revealed left him completely speechless. A perfect day. A perfect family. At the christening of his infant son, Noah, billionaire Arthur Harrison stood beside his new partner, Brenda. It was a perfect new beginning. But as the rites began, an 8-year-old girl, the housekeeper's daughter, slipped past the rows of wealthy guests. She reached the front, tugged on the billionaire's expensive jacket, and rose on her tiptoes. She cupped her hand and whispered 6 words that stopped his heart. "That baby isn't yours, Mr. Harrison." Arthur demanded a DNA test to prove the girl a liar. But what that test reveals is a truth so dark it will leave him speechless. A single whisper was all it took to shatter the illusion. Billionaire Arthur Harrison stood in the grand family chapel, his life perfectly rebuilt. But a small, 8-year-old girl saw the crack in the foundation. Arthur felt the heavy scent of white lilies before he saw them. They were everywhere, draped over the pews and clustered on the altar, filling the air with a perfume so thick it was almost choking. Beside him, his new partner Brenda held their infant son, Noah. The baby was about to be christened. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the marble floor in brilliant jewel tones. It was a perfect day, a perfect family. The final piece of the life Arthur had carefully, painfully constructed from the wreckage of the last 2 years. Arthur, a man who had built a global shipping empire from nothing, felt removed. He looked out at the small, exclusive gathering, his business partners, his oldest friends. They were all here to celebrate his new beginning. He glanced at Brenda. She beamed at him, a radiant, flawless smile. She was the picture of a proud new mother. Then his gaze drifted to the front pew. His 10-year-old son, Matthew, sat alone. His shoulders were slumped inside an expensive new suit that looked 2 sizes too big for his thin frame. Matthew was staring at his polished shoes, his dark hair falling over his eyes. Since Arthur's first wife, Caroline, had passed away, Matthew had become a ghost in their own home. Arthur had hoped Brenda and the arrival of baby Noah would bring his son back to life. He had hoped this new, bright family would mend the broken pieces. He had hoped wrong. In the back row, standing near the massive carved oak doors, was the head housekeeper, Diane Miller. Beside her stood her daughter, Emily. At 8 years old, Emily was a slip of a girl, all blonde hair and watchful blue eyes. She was, Arthur knew, Matthew's only real friend. He had seen them countless times from his study window, huddled by the ancient oak tree at the edge of the property. He would watch Matthew, who was so silent and sullen in the main house, suddenly look like a child again. He would be animated, talking with his hands, skipping stones with Emily. Diane's family had been with the Harrisons for generations. Emily's great-grandfather, Sergeant Jack Miller, had saved Arthur's father's life in the war. Arthur kept the man's framed metal citation in his study. It was a constant, solid reminder of integrity, of truth. The pastor began the rites, his voice echoing in the vaulted ceiling. "And who will stand for this child?" Arthur smiled at Brenda. She smiled back, a perfect, practiced smile. But Emily, in the back, was not looking at the pastor. She was watching Brenda. Emily had seen things. Just yesterday, she had been in the library, hidden in her favorite reading nook behind the heavy curtains, when Brenda and Matthew had entered. Brenda thought they were alone. "You will stop this moping," Brenda had hissed, her voice low and sharp, her fingers digging into Matthew's upper arm. "You are ruining the aesthetic of this family. If you're not careful, your father will send you to a school so far away you'll never see him again. He has a new son now. He doesn't need a sad one." Matthew had flinched, his face pale. Emily had felt a hot, bright anger. It wasn't right. Now, in the chapel, Emily looked at Matthew in the front row. He looked small. He looked terrified. She looked at her mother, who always told her, "A Miller tells the truth no matter what. It's in our blood." Emily made a decision. As the pastor prepared to bless the child, Emily slipped away from her mother. "Emily, come back," Diane whispered, her eyes wide with panic. But the girl was fast. She moved like a shadow, slipping past the rows of guests in their fine suits and silk dresses. She arrived at the front, right beside the most powerful man in the city. She tugged on the sleeve of his expensive jacket. Arthur, startled, looked down. "Emily? What is it, sweetheart?" "Not right now." Emily rose on her tiptoes, cupped her small hand around his ear, and whispered 6 words that stopped his heart. "That baby isn't yours, Mr. Harrison." The poison Arthur Harrison froze. The pastor's voice became a distant hum. The scent of lilies was suddenly sickening. He straightened up slowly. He must have misheard. It was an 8-year-old child's fantasy, a strange, cruel joke. He looked down at Emily. She was not laughing. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a terrible, unblinking seriousness. She was not a child playing a game. She was a soldier delivering a message. In the back row, he saw her mother, Diane, rise from her seat. Her hand was over her mouth, her expression one of pure horror. "Arthur," Brenda whispered, nudging him, her smile tightening. "The pastor is waiting." Arthur blinked. He placed his hand on the baby's head, as instructed. His hand felt heavy, disconnected from his body. He went through the motions. He smiled. He held Noah for the photographs. But the poison was in. The ceremony ended. The guests moved to the sprawling lawns of the estate for a lavish reception. Waiters carried silver trays of champagne and delicate hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly near the rose garden. Every "he looks just like you, Arthur," felt like a hammer blow. Every "he has Brenda's smile" felt like a question. Arthur moved through the crowd like a man in a dream. He accepted congratulations, his eyes scanning the grounds. He found them. Diane had Emily by the arm, hidden behind a large potted palm near the service entrance, her voice a low, angry hiss. "What did you think you were doing? To say such a thing? To Mr. Harrison? At the christening? You could ruin us, Emily. I could lose my job. We could lose our home." "But Mommy, it's true," Emily insisted, her voice trembling but stubborn. "She's a liar. She hurts Matthew. What she does with her stepson is not our concern," Diane snapped, her fear making her sharp. "You will go to our rooms, and you will not come out. And you will never repeat that wicked story again. Do you understand me?" "No." Arthur stepped out from behind a marble pillar. "I'd like to understand, Diane." Diane spun around, her face draining of all color. "Mr. Harrison!" "Sir, I cannot apologize enough. For Emily, she has a wild imagination. She reads too many stories." "Does she?" Arthur looked at Emily. He knelt, so he was at her eye level. His movements felt slow, deliberate. "You said she hurts Matthew?" Emily nodded, her fear vanishing, replaced by conviction. She grabbed his arm. "Yesterday, in the library. She said she would send him away. She said he was ruining the aesthetic." Arthur's blood ran cold. Aesthetic. It was Brenda's favorite word. And the baby?" Arthur asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I heard her," Emily said, her voice growing stronger. "I was in the garden, under the library window. Matthew and me, we hide there sometimes. Ms. Brenda came in. She was on the phone. She was angry, Emily's brow furrowed as if remembering. She said, 'He'll never know, Paul. He's so blinded by me, he'd believe anything.' She said, 'He's so desperate for a family, he won't even question it.' The timing was perfect. Arthur thinks this baby is his." And then she laughed. She said, "He'll raise another man's son and pay for everything. We'll have it all." "Paul?" Arthur asked. The name meant nothing to him. "Yes," Emily said. "Paul." "Arthur." Brenda's voice, sharp and bright, cut through the air. "There you are. Your partner, Mr. Henderson, is leaving. She glided onto the terrace, her champagne flute held perfectly. Her smile was frozen in place. She saw Diane. She saw the pale, determined face of Emily. Her smile faltered, becoming a thin line. "What is this?" Brenda asked, her tone shifting. "Diane, are you bothering Mr. Harrison?" "And you," she sneered at Emily. "I told you, children are to be unseen today." "Brenda," Arthur said, his voice flat, dead. "Who is Paul?" Brenda laughed, a high, nervous sound. "Paul? What, like the name?" "I don't know, darling. A dozen Pauls." "Why? What did you say to Matthew yesterday?" "In the library?" Brenda's eyes flickered. "Matthew? I told him to be ready on time." "He is so difficult, Arthur. You know that. He's grieving." She said the word grieving as if it were a disease. "She's lying," Emily said, her voice clear as a bell. Brenda's beautiful face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. She took a step toward the child. You little vermin, you little servant girl, how dare you?" "Get away from her," Arthur commanded. Brenda stopped. She had never heard that tone from him. It was not the voice of the kind, grieving widower she had so carefully managed. It was the voice of the man who built an empire. She spat at Emily. "You're going to believe her? A servant? Over me? The mother of your child?" "Is he?" Arthur asked. "Is he my child?" "Yes. Yes, of course he is. How dare you ask me that, after all I've done to give you this family?" "Good," Arthur said. He pulled out his phone. "Then you won't mind a DNA test." The word hung in the air, silencing the string quartet. A test?" she stammered. You're joking." "No, a test, just a simple swab, to clear the air, to prove this little girl is a liar and that I am being absurd." Brenda stared at him. The cornered animal. She looked from Arthur to Diane to the stone-faced little girl who had ruined everything. "I am not," she whispered, her voice venomous, "going to be humiliated by staff. This party is over. You have embarrassed me, Arthur. You have embarrassed yourself." She turned and stormed back into the house. Arthur stood for a moment. He looked at Diane, who was now weeping silently into her hands. "Mr. Harrison, we'll pack. We'll be gone tonight." "You will do no such thing," Arthur said. He knelt in front of Emily. He placed his large hands on her small shoulders. "You were very brave," he said. "Your great-grandfather would be proud of you. Now, I need you to stay with your mother. Lock your door. Do not speak to anyone but me. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Emily said. Arthur turned. He found his oldest friend and lawyer, David Vance, by the champagne fountain. "David," Arthur said. "Arthur, rough day at the office?" David replied, his eyes kind but shrewd. He had been Caroline's friend, too. He was not a fan of Brenda. "The party is over. Tell them Noah has a sudden fever. Tell them Brenda is exhausted. I don't care. Get everyone out. Now." David, seeing the look in Arthur's eyes, didn't argue. He nodded. "It's done." Within 20 minutes, the music stopped. The guests were gone. The house was silent. Arthur walked into the grand hall. The polished marble floor echoed his footsteps. The scent of lilies was overpowering. He found Matthew sitting on the bottom step of the main staircase, still in his heavy suit. "Matthew," Arthur said. Matthew looked up. His eyes were red. "Is it true, Dad? What Emily said? What did she tell you?" "She told me she was going to tell you," Matthew said. "About the baby, and about Paul." Arthur's blood ran cold. "You knew about Paul?" I saw them," Matthew whispered, new tears welling. "In the driveway. Last month. When you were in Chicago for that meeting. He had a shiny red sports car. He was yelling at her. He said, 'You're getting greedy, Brenda.' Stick to the plan. And she yelled back, "The plan doesn't work unless he's fully on board." Arthur's knees felt weak. She saw me watching from the window," Matthew continued, his voice cracking. "She came to my room. She told me. She told me if I ever said anything, she would make you send me away. And you'd believe her, because she gave you a baby. And all I gave you was sadness." Arthur sank to his knees on the cold marble. He pulled his son into an embrace so tight it was almost painful. He buried his face in Matthew's hair. "I am so sorry, Matthew," Arthur choked out. "I am so sorry. I failed you. I didn't see. I didn't protect you." "It's okay, Dad," Matthew cried, clinging to him. "Emily, she said she'd fix it. She said she's a Miller, and Millers aren't afraid of monsters." Arthur held his son, realizing that an 8-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy had more courage and integrity than he had shown in a year. He had been so desperate to fill the hole Caroline left, he had invited a monster into their home. "I'm calling the doctor, Matthew," Arthur said, his voice now steel. "And we are going to fix it. Tonight." Arthur sat with Matthew on the cold marble stairs, the grand hall dark except for a single lamp in the entryway. The house felt impossibly large, a hollow, echoing museum. The sweet, cloying smell of the lilies left behind from the party filled the air, a reminder of the day's bitter farce. "Matthew," Arthur said, his voice rough, "go to your room. Lock the door. I will come and get you when it's safe." I want to stay with you," Matthew said, his small hand gripping Arthur's arm. "I know, but I need you to be safe. I can't think straight unless I know you are secure." Arthur looked his son in the eyes. "I will not let her hurt you. Ever again. This ends tonight." Matthew saw the change in his father. The vague, sad man who had drifted through the house for 2 years was gone. The man who sat before him now was the one who negotiated billion-dollar deals, the one whose quiet no could end a career. Matthew nodded. "Okay, Dad." He ran up the stairs, the sound of his feet disappearing, followed by the soft, heavy click of his bedroom door. Arthur was alone. He made 2 calls. The first was to his head of security, a former Secret Service agent. "Mark," Arthur said, his voice low. "No one leaves this estate. No one. And I want to know who Paul is. A red sports car. Check all security footage for the last 2 months. I want a name." The second call was to Dr. Alistair Evans. Dr. Evans had been the Harrison family physician for 40 years. He had delivered Arthur. He had treated Caroline through her illness. He was a man of absolute, old-world discretion. "Arthur?" "It's 9 o'clock. Is everything all right?" The old doctor's voice was gravelly. "Alistair, I need you. Bring a DNA test kit. The fast one. The one you use for legal matters." There was a pause on the line. Dr. Evans did not ask why. He simply said, "I'm 20 minutes away." Arthur hung up. He walked to the kitchen and found Diane and Emily. They were huddled at a small table, a half-packed duffel bag on the floor. "Mr. Harrison, we're ready to leave," Diane said, rising, her eyes red. "You are not leaving," Arthur said, his voice firm but kind. He knelt before Emily again. "What you did today, Emily, was the bravest thing I have ever seen. Your great-grandfather, Sergeant Miller, he would have been so proud." Emily looked at her mother, then back at Arthur. "You're not mad?" "I am angry, Emily. But not at you. Never at you." He placed a hand on Diane's arm. "You and your daughter are part of this family, Diane. You are safe here. Go to your rooms. Lock your door. This will be over soon." Diane nodded, clutching his hand. "Thank you, sir." "God bless you, sir." Arthur walked back to the grand hall. He stood at the bottom of the sweeping staircase and looked up into the darkness. "Brenda," he called. His voice did not echo. It filled the space. There was no answer. He took the stairs 2 at a time. He walked down the plush runner of the upstairs gallery, past portraits of his ancestors. He stopped at the door to the master suite. It was locked. "Brenda, Dr. Evans is on his way. He is coming to take a DNA sample from me, and from the baby." He heard a muffled sound inside, a frantic whisper. She was on the phone. "Brenda, open the door, or I will have security remove it." He waited. 1 second, 2. The lock clicked. The door opened. Brenda stood there, not in her fine party dress, but in a silk dressing gown. Her eyes were hard, her face pale. She was holding baby Noah, clutching him to her chest like a shield. "You're insane," she hissed. "You are having a breakdown. You're going to listen to a child, a servant, and humiliate me? This will be in the papers by morning, Arthur. Billionaire loses his mind. Is that what you want?" "What I want," Arthur said, walking past her into the room, "is the truth. I should have wanted it a long time ago." He saw her cell phone on the unmade bed, screen side down. She had been talking to Paul. "The test is an insult," she said, her voice rising, trying to find the hysterical pitch that always made him back down, made him apologize. "It is an accusation. I will not have my son subjected to this." "He is not your son," Arthur said. Brenda froze. "What?" "I mean, he is not just your son. If he is mine, he is my son. And I am his father. And I am ordering the test. And if I refuse," she challenged, her eyes glinting. "Then I will know the answer," Arthur said simply. "And you will leave this house tonight with nothing. Not a dollar, not a dress. I will call the police and have you removed for fraud, and I will file for sole custody until the courts can prove paternity. Your choice." She stared at him. The kind, grieving fool was gone. You bastard," she whispered. "Get the baby ready," Arthur said. The doorbell rang. Dr. Evans was waiting in the library. He was a tall, thin man with white hair and a face that had seen too much. He carried a small, locked medical case. He said nothing. He just looked at Arthur with sad, knowing eyes. Arthur went to the nursery and retrieved the baby. Noah was sleeping. He was a beautiful child. Arthur felt a terrible pang. He had tried to love this baby. He had tried to see himself in the boy's small features. He had only seen Brenda. He brought the child to the library. Brenda followed, her face a mask of cold fury. Dr. Evans opened his kit. "It's a simple cheek swab," he said, his voice calm, a gentle counterpoint to the room's electric tension. "It will not hurt the child." "Arthur, you first." Dr. Evans took the sample from Arthur, bagged it, labeled it. "Now the boy," Dr. Evans said. He gently woke Noah, who whimpered. The doctor took the sample, bagged it, labeled it. "Now, Brenda, if you please." "Why me?" she snapped. "We know I'm the mother." "It's for a full panel, my dear," Dr. Evans said, his voice mild but his eyes sharp. "To check against both of you. It makes the results indisputable." Brenda sat. She glared at Arthur as the doctor took her sample. "This is over," she said to Arthur. "You know that, right? Whatever this test says, we are over. You have destroyed us." "No," Arthur said, his gaze fixed on the small sealed bags on the desk. "You did." Dr. Evans packed his case. "I will run this myself at the lab, my lab. No one else will touch it. You will have your answer before sunrise." "Thank you, Alistair," Arthur said. The doctor paused at the library door. He looked at Brenda, who was glaring at her phone, and then at Arthur. "Caroline, she would have been proud of you tonight, Arthur. You are finally awake." He left. The first result. Arthur sat in his study. The framed metal citation of Sergeant Jack Miller, Emily's great-grandfather, was on his desk. Arthur stared at it. A man who ran into gunfire to save his friend. A man of honor. The house was silent. Too silent. Brenda was in her room. He had Mark, his head of security, standing outside her door. She was not to leave, not yet. Matthew was asleep. Diane and Emily were safe. Arthur waited. He watched the clock on his desk. 3 a.m. 4 a.m. He thought about the last 2 years. His grief for Caroline had been a fog. He had been so lonely, so desperate to give Matthew a new mother, a complete family. He had met Brenda at a charity gala. She was beautiful, vibrant, and seemed so simple. She wasn't from his world. She was a fundraiser for the art museum. She was kind. He saw it now. It was all a lie. A careful, calculated performance. She had seen a broken, wealthy man, and she had played a part. His phone buzzed on the desk. It was Dr. Evans. Arthur's hand trembled as he picked it up. Alistair. Arthur. The doctor's voice was heavy, tired. I ran the test, and I ran it again. There is no question. Arthur closed his eyes. Tell me. The baby. Noah. He is a healthy boy. No genetic issues. Alistair, tell me. Paternity is a 0% match, Arthur. There is no biological possibility that you are his father. Arthur let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. It was a strange, hollow feeling, not relief, not even anger. Just a cold, hard confirmation. Emily was right. Thank you, Alistair, Arthur said. There is something else, Dr. Evans said, his voice hesitant. Something very strange. What? The test against Brenda, the one I insisted on. What about it? Arthur asked, opening his eyes. Arthur, she isn't his mother, either. Arthur gripped the edge of his mahogany desk. The solid wood felt like sand. What did you say, Alistair? She is not the mother, Dr. Evans repeated, his voice firm. The maternity test is as conclusive as the paternity one. 0% match. That baby is not related to you or to her. Arthur, where did she get this child? The question hung in the opulent study, more chilling than any ghost. This wasn't a simple case of infidelity. It wasn't a lie to trap a rich man. This was something else, something darker. Arthur's mind raced, replaying the last 10 months. It all clicked into place, every small, strange detail that his grief had allowed him to ignore. The miraculous pregnancy. She had announced it on the first anniversary of Caroline's death. He had been a wreck, unshaven, drinking too much, overcome with grief. She had come to him, held him in his dark study, and told him, "This is a sign, Arthur. A sign that we are meant to heal. A new life. Our new life." He had clung to that hope, to her, and had asked no questions. He had been desperate for the news to be true. Then, the immediate, careful isolation. "I don't want to stress you, darling," she had said, her hand on his arm, her voice full of false sympathy. "You have so much to deal with, running the empire, handling Matthew's grief. It's all so fragile. Let me take care of this. Let me handle all the appointments. I'll tell you everything. Just let me protect our little miracle from all this stress." He had let her. He had been grateful for it. He remembered the few times he had offered to go to an ultrasound. "No, darling," she'd demurred quickly. "It's just a routine checkup. So boring. You stay and finish your work. I'll bring you a new picture. Or, I'm going with a girlfriend. We'll make a girl's day of it. You'd be so bored." She had shown him blurry ultrasound photos. He realized now they could have been anyone's. They were probably screenshots from the internet. She had a private midwife, she'd claimed. A specialist who did home visits to avoid the press and the hospitals where Arthur was a major donor and his name would be on every chart. It was all so convenient. The miscarriage. She must have lost the baby, Paul's baby, months ago. But she had already been living in the mansion. She couldn't let the lie go. She must have hidden it. He remembered a period, around her 5th month, where she claimed she had a brief illness and stayed in her rooms for a week. She had been recovering, she'd said. In truth, she must have been hiding the physical evidence of the loss. After that, she wore loose, flowing clothes. She complained of lingering sickness and sensitive skin to avoid him touching her, isolating herself further. And then, the birth. It had been sudden, in the middle of the night. She had called him from her cell phone, her voice a panting, frantic whisper. She claimed she'd felt sharp pains, and her midwife had insisted they meet at a private, discreet birthing center across town. "It's happening too fast, Arthur. I'm already in the car. Just meet me there." By the time he'd navigated the city at 3 a.m., she was in a pristine private room, makeup perfectly touched up. She was holding a calm, quiet, swaddled baby. "He's here," she'd wept. "Our perfect boy." A baby she had bought. The birth certificate. She had presented it to him a week later, all official seals and signatures. It was fake. A prop, just like the child. "Arthur, be careful." Dr. Evans' voice pulled him from his thoughts. This is a criminal matter." "Thank you, Alistair," Arthur said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Send me the report." "Encrypted. Do not speak of this to anyone." The line clicked. Arthur stared at the phone. He had been prepared for betrayal. He was not prepared for this. He thought of the child. Noah, a baby boy with no name, no parents, used as a pawn in a monstrous game. A cold, hard fury, purer than any emotion he had felt in years, settled over him. His other line buzzed. It was Mark, his head of security. "Speak," Arthur said. "We have him, Mr. Harrison." Mark's voice was all business. "The red sports car was easy. It's registered to a Paul Krendler. He's a disbarred lawyer. Lost his license 2 years ago for fraud and jury tampering. We checked his known associates." "And?" Arthur asked. "His primary associate, sir, is Brenda. They've been working low-level cons for years. Insurance fraud, art forgery. Nothing this big. But there's more. Krendler has been on a federal watch list for the last 6 months." Arthur sat upright. "For what?" "Suspicion of involvement in an illegal adoption ring. They move fast. They target wealthy, desperate individuals. People who can't pass the scrutiny of a legal adoption. Or, in your case, people who think the child is their own." He was waiting for her call, Arthur realized. The call he interrupted. She was going to run. "It seems that way, sir," Mark said. "My men are on the perimeter. The estate is locked down. He can't get in, and she can't get out. What are your orders?" "Keep him off this property. Do not engage unless he tries to force entry. I want him on the outside, wondering what went wrong. I want him nervous." "Yes, sir." "Mark, send one of your men. Someone discreet, in a plain suit, to the main hall. I want him standing at the bottom of the stairs. Brenda is not to leave the house, but she is no longer to be confined to her room. I want her to see him." "Understood, sir." Arthur stood up. He walked out of his study, the encrypted report from Dr. Evans on his phone. He crossed the cavernous grand hall. As he approached the staircase, he saw one of Mark's men, a tall, impassive man in a dark suit, move silently into place by the front door. Arthur climbed the stairs. He felt a strange, cold calm. The fog of grief was gone, burned away by the acid of the truth. He did not knock. He walked into the master suite. Brenda was standing by the window, her phone in her hand, staring out into the darkness. She was dressed now, in expensive jeans and a cashmere sweater, a packed designer duffel bag at her feet. She was ready to run. She spun around, her face a mask of fury. "My phone has no signal. What did you do? You can't hold me here. This is kidnapping." "It's a signal jammer," Arthur said calmly. "Standard security. I can't have you calling your partner." "I don't know what you're talking about," she shrieked. "Paul?" That's a lie from a stupid child." "His name is Paul Krendler," Arthur said. Brenda's face went white. A disbarred lawyer, Arthur continued, walking slowly toward her, as if she were a cornered animal, specializing in fraud, currently on a federal watch list for illegal adoptions. I don't, she stammered, backing away until she hit the wall. The party is over, Brenda, Dr. Evans called. So, you found out? She spat, her fear turning to venom. Congratulations, Arthur. You're sterile. Your precious Caroline was sick for so long, and you were so weak. You're not man enough to have a child. Arthur didn't flinch. He's not my son. That's true. I have the report. He held up his phone. But then, I looked at the rest of the test. The rest? She asked, her eyes narrowing, confused. My test. The baby's test. And your test, Brenda. He saw the flicker of panic, the one variable she hadn't accounted for. It's a mistake. The test is wrong, she whispered. No, Arthur said. It's 100% accurate. He's not my son. And Brenda, he's not your son, either. Brenda's knees buckled. She slid down the wall, landing on the plush carpet. The mask of the beautiful, grieving partner, the loving mother, the cold con artist, it all evaporated. What was left was small and ugly and terrified. No, she whimpered. No, you're lying. You're lying. Where did you get him? Arthur demanded, his voice like thunder. Who is this baby? Did you buy him? Did you steal him, Brenda? I had to, she finally screamed, rocking back and forth, tearing at her hair. I had to. Tell me, he commanded. I was pregnant, she sobbed, the words tumbling out in a broken, desperate confession. I really was. With Paul. We were going to do it. We were going to pass his child off as yours. It was the perfect plan. You were so broken, so lonely. You'd never question it. She looked up at him, her face wet with tears that were now, finally, real. And then, I lost it. At 6 months. I lost the baby. It was a boy. Arthur said nothing. He just watched her. Paul said it was fine, she choked. He said we could still make it work. He said he knew people. He said he could get us a replacement, a baby that looked enough like me, born at the right time. He said it was just business. We just needed a prop, something to seal the deal, to get me your name, to get us access to the estate, to the accounts. A prop, Arthur repeated. The word was bile in his throat. We paid, she whispered. $20,000. To a clinic. Paul handled it. They gave us the baby. They gave us the fake birth certificate. It was so easy. And the baby, he never cried. He was so quiet. She was fully undone. A woman admitting to a crime so grotesque, it was almost unbelievable. You took a child from its mother, Arthur said, his voice shaking with contained rage. You bought a human being, so you could steal my money. You were going to find out anyway. She suddenly lashed back, trying to find some purchase. When he got older, when he looked nothing like you. This was just a way to get what I deserved. And Matthew? Arthur asked, his voice deadly quiet. Was threatening to send my son away. Was that just business too? He knew, she whimpered. The little brat. He saw Paul. He kept looking at me, like he knew. He was a threat to the plan. I had to control him. Arthur looked at this woman, this hollow thing, and felt nothing but a cold, vast emptiness. Get your bag, he said. What? Are you letting me go? She scrambled to her feet, hope in her eyes. Oh, Arthur, thank you. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. You're going to walk down the main staircase. You're going to walk out the front door. The man standing there will escort you. Escort me where? She asked, grabbing her duffel bag. To the police car that is waiting for you at the end of the driveway. I have already sent them the DNA report and a copy of Paul Krendler's file. They are very interested in speaking with you about child trafficking. Her face went slack. No? No, Arthur, you can't. Think of your reputation. The scandal. You should have thought of that, Arthur said. You threatened my son. You brought a stolen child into my home. My reputation is the last thing on my mind. You're destroying me, she shrieked. You destroyed yourself, Brenda. You just didn't know it until tonight. He stepped aside. Go. Now. Brenda stared at him, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was stunning. She grabbed her bag and ran from the room. Arthur listened to her footsteps on the stairs, a sharp clack, clack, clack on the marble. He heard her gasp. She must have seen Mark's man. He heard the heavy front door open and then close. And then, for the first time in 2 years, the house was clean. The boy in the nursery. Arthur walked, not to his own room, but to the nursery. He had hated this room. It was Brenda's creation, all sterile whites and pale grays. It felt cold, like a catalog. But now, he walked into it, and it was just a room. In the dim light, he looked at the sleeping child. Noah. A name given by a woman who was not his mother. This boy, he was the greatest victim in all of this. A piece of merchandise. Arthur felt a sudden, powerful wave of protectiveness. This child was an orphan, not by fate, but by greed. He gently reached into the crib and picked the baby up. The boy was heavy and warm. He smelled like milk and powder. He stirred, his small fist brushing against Arthur's jaw. He didn't wake. Arthur held the baby and walked to the window, looking out over the dark, sprawling lawns of his estate. The police car at the end of the drive flashed its lights once, then pulled away, taking Brenda with it. He was alone, with his son, and a stolen baby. What was he supposed to do? This child had no one. He heard a small noise at the door. He turned. Matthew was standing there, his door finally unlocked. Beside him, in her bathrobe, was Emily. Her mother, Diane, stood behind them, her hand on Emily's shoulder. Is she gone? Matthew asked. Yes, Arthur said. She's gone. She will never, ever be back. Matthew let out a long, shaky breath. He walked into the nursery. He looked at the baby in Arthur's arms. So, he's not our brother, Matthew said. It wasn't a question. No, Arthur said. He's not. What's going to happen to him? Matthew asked. Arthur looked down at the child. I don't know, son. The people Brenda got him from, they were very bad people. He doesn't have a family. Yes, he does, Emily said, her voice small but clear. Arthur looked at her. He's here, she said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. We found him. You can't just send him away. That's what she would do. Arthur stared at the 8-year-old girl. This child who, in one day, had saved his son and exposed a criminal conspiracy. This child who possessed a moral compass so true, it humbled him. He needs a name, Matthew said, reaching out a tentative finger to touch the baby's hand. He does, Arthur agreed, his throat tight. What about Jack? Emily suggested. For my great-grandfather. He was brave. Arthur looked at Diane, who had tears streaming down her face. He looked at Matthew, who was watching the baby with a look of wonder, not resentment. And he looked at the child in his arms, a child who had been bought and sold and had, by some miracle, landed here, landed with them. Jack, Arthur said, testing the name. Jack Harrison. He felt the baby squeeze his finger. The sun rose. Arthur had not slept. He sat in his study, the door open. For the first time, he did not want to be closed off. He had spent 2 years in a fog, and now that it was lifted, he was terrified of the dark. He heard movement. Diane Miller came down the main staircase, her face pale, but her eyes resolute. She went to the kitchen. Soon, the smell of coffee, real and strong, filled the hall. A few minutes later, Emily appeared, her blonde hair brushed. She was not in her servant's uniform, but in a simple yellow dress. She was carrying a book. She sat on the bottom step of the staircase, in the exact spot Matthew had been the night before, and began to read. Then, Matthew himself came down. He saw Emily and sat beside her. He didn't say anything. He just sat. Arthur watched them. A 10-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl sitting in the grand hall of a silent mansion. A silent, shared understanding between them. Diane came in. She handed a cup of coffee to Arthur. "Sir." "Thank you, Diane." She then brought a tray with 2 glasses of milk and 2 small plates of toast to the children. "You must eat." Matthew, who had not had a real appetite in 2 years, took the toast and ate it. Arthur felt a crack in his chest. This was a family. Not the one he had tried to build. The one that had been here all along, waiting for him to wake up. He held the warm baby in his arms. Jack. The child was awake, his eyes open, looking at the world with a calm curiosity. Arthur's phone, now reconnected to the network, rang. It was Mark, his head of security. "Sir." Mark's voice was grim. "Krendler's car was found. It was abandoned on a service road 5 miles from the estate. He's gone. He must have had a second vehicle, or someone picked him up." Arthur's new, fragile peace shattered. The man who bought and sold children was still out there. "The police?" Arthur asked. "They're running his financials. With Brenda in custody, her testimony is helpful. She's given up everything to save herself. But Krendler is the ringleader. He's smart, and he's gone deep. Find him, Mark. I don't care what it costs. I want this child to be safe. I want every child he has ever touched to be safe." "We will, sir. But there's another problem." "What is it?" "The baby," Mark said. "Brenda. She has no claim. You have no legal claim, sir. The state, they'll have to take him. He'll be put into the foster system." Arthur looked down at the child in his arms. After all this, after saving him from a monster, he was going to hand him over to a cold, faceless system. "No," Arthur said. "Sir, we don't have a choice. His birth certificate is a forgery. He legally does not exist. He's a ghost." "Then we will find out who he is," Arthur said, a new resolve hardening his voice. "This is not just a prop, Mark. This is a human being. His parents. His mother, she is out there somewhere. She may be looking for him." He hung up. He looked at Diane, who had overheard. Her face was a mask of grief. "What will you do, Mr. Harrison?" "I am going to find his family," Arthur said. "It is the only right thing to do." He looked at Matthew and Emily, who had stopped their quiet breakfast to listen. "I am going to use every resource I have. I will hire every investigator. We will find the hospital this nurse worked at. We will find this child's mother." "But what if you find her?" Matthew asked, his voice small. "And she wants him back?" Arthur met his son's gaze. This was the most important lesson he would ever teach him. "Then we will give him back, Matthew," Arthur said, "because he is not ours to keep. He was stolen. And loving someone means wanting what is right for them, not what is right for us." Emily nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "Like Sergeant Miller," she said. Arthur looked at her. "What?" "Mommy told me. He saved your father, but he was hurt. He had to go home. He couldn't stay. He did the right thing, even though it was hard." Arthur stared at the child. He called his lawyer, David Vance. "David," Arthur said, his voice raw, "I have a new client. He's 1 day old. He has no name, and he has no family. I want you to find them. I want you to use my entire fortune if you have to. Find this child's mother." The next 3 days were the longest of Arthur's life. The house, once a tomb, was now a buzzing hive of activity. Federal agents and private investigators moved quietly through the library, which had become their command center. Krendler's face was on the news. The story of Brenda's arrest had been contained. Arthur's influence had kept the press at bay, framing it as a simple matter of fraud. The true dark story of the baby was known only to the people in this house. While the investigators worked, a strange new life took root. Arthur refused to let the baby, Jack, be handled by strangers. He, Diane, and Matthew took turns. Arthur learned to change a diaper. He learned to warm a bottle. He would sit in his study, Jack sleeping on his chest, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt the heavy weight of his grief for Caroline begin to lift. It was not being replaced. It was making room. Matthew was a different boy. The sullen, silent ghost was gone. He was a doting older brother. He would sit by the crib and tell Jack about his video games, about school, about his mother, about how she would have loved him. Emily was his partner. She was the expert, as she had a baby cousin once. She showed Matthew how to hold Jack's head. They were a family, a strange, broken, and beautiful one. On the 4th day, David Vance walked into the study. Arthur was holding Jack, rocking him. "Arthur," David said. He looked exhausted. Did they find him?" Arthur asked. He meant Krendler. "They did," David said. "He was caught at the Canadian border." "It's over. He's talking. He's giving up the whole network to save himself." Arthur let out a breath. "Good. Good. The baby, he's safe." "Yes," David said, his voice heavy. "Arthur, sit down. We found her. We found the mother." Arthur's heart stopped. He sat. "Where is she? Is she all right? Does she know? She's why I'm here." Krendler's associate, the nurse. She confessed everything. The mother's name is Lucy Miller. Arthur's blood ran cold. "Miller? Like Diane? Like Emily?" David nodded, his eyes sad. "She's Diane's niece, Arthur. Her estranged older brother's only daughter, the one who ran off to the city a few years ago. She's Emily's first cousin." Arthur looked up, stunned. He remembered Emily's words. "I have a baby cousin once." "My God," Arthur whispered. "Diane? Does she know?" "Not yet," David said. "There's more. Lucy, she's very sick. She had complications after the birth. She's been at the regional hospital ever since. The nurse, the one working for Krendler, she told Lucy the baby was stillborn." Arthur felt physically ill. She thinks her baby is dead." "Yes, and Arthur." David hesitated. "The DNA. Dr. Evans ran the baby's DNA through the national database, just in case, to see if he was a missing person. And he wasn't. But we got a familial match, a very strong one, to a sealed record, a military DNA file." "A military file?" Arthur was lost. David slid a paper across the desk. "The baby's father, Arthur. He was a soldier. He was killed in action 2 months ago. He never knew Lucy was pregnant." Arthur looked at the name. It meant nothing to him. But the match? The soldier, his DNA was on file, and it matched another sample, a sample from a database of veterans. The baby, Jack, his paternal grandfather, is Sergeant Jack Miller. Arthur's world tilted. That's not possible. Sergeant Miller, he was Diane's. "He was Diane's grandfather," David said, finishing the thought. "And he was also this dead soldier's grandfather. Diane's brother. And the soldier's father. They were brothers. It means Lucy and the soldier. They were cousins. No. It's a tragedy, Arthur. Two branches of the same family, broken, lost, finding each other in the dark. Lucy, she's been alone this whole time. She lost her family. She lost the man she loved, and she thought she lost her child. Arthur looked at the baby in his arms. This child was a Miller, through and through, the blood of the man who had saved his own father. He realized what had happened. Emily hadn't just saved a random baby, she had, with some unexplainable primal instinct, saved her own blood, her own family. Go get Diane, Arthur said, his voice thick. And get Matthew. And Emily. Get them all. Now. They stood in the study. Diane and Emily. Matthew. Arthur stood by the fireplace. He was still holding Jack. Diane, Arthur began, his voice shaking. We found Jack's mother. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. Oh, sir, thank God. Is she well? Her name is Lucy Miller. Diane froze. Her eyes widened. No, that cannot be. My brother's Lucy? Our Lucy? Yes, Arthur said gently. She's been at the hospital. She's been very sick, Diane. And she was told her baby, this baby, had died. Diane Miller let out a sound. It was not a cry. It was a deep, wounded noise from the center of the earth. She fell to her knees. My girl. They told her, oh God in heaven. Emily rushed to her, wrapping her small arms around her mother's neck. Mommy? Mommy? What is it? It's your cousin, baby, Diane sobbed, clutching her daughter. It's Lucy. And this baby. He's family, Emily finished, her voice clear. She looked at Arthur. He's ours. I knew it. Matthew looked at his father, his eyes wide, full of a terrible, dawning understanding. We have to give him back, don't we? Arthur looked at his son. He nodded. Yes, son. We do. The drive to the hospital was silent. Arthur drove. Diane sat in the passenger seat, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. In the back, Matthew sat on one side, Emily on the other. Between them, in a new car seat, was baby Jack, sleeping. They walked through the cold, sterile hallways. A federal agent, a kind-looking woman, met them. She's weak, the agent said, but she's strong. She's ready. Go in. The room was dim. A young woman, pale and thin, with the same blonde hair as Emily, was propped up on pillows. She looked at the door. Her eyes met Diane's. Auntie Di? Lucy whispered. Oh, my girl, Diane wept, rushing to the bed, taking her niece's thin hand. My sweet girl. We didn't know. We've been so worried. I'm so sorry, Auntie, Lucy cried. I lost him. I lost my baby. No, Diane whispered, her voice choked. No, you didn't, baby. You didn't. Arthur stepped out from the shadow of the doorway. He was holding Jack. Lucy's eyes, dull with grief and medication, widened. She looked from Arthur to the bundle in his arms. They told me he was gone, she whispered, her voice breaking. They lied, Arthur said, his own voice thick. He's perfect. He's a fighter. Just like your family. He stepped forward. Lucy's arms, thin and trembling, came up. Arthur Harrison, billionaire, the man who had lost everything, gently placed the baby into the arms of his mother. Lucy pulled the baby to her chest. She let out a sob, a sound of such profound, agonizing relief that it shook the room. She buried her face in his blanket, breathing him in. My baby. You're alive. You're alive. Arthur stepped back. He stood in the doorway. Matthew came and stood beside him, his hand finding his father's. Emily went and stood by the bed, her small hand resting on her mother's back, who was holding her cousin. Arthur watched them. The four of them, clustered around the hospital bed, A family broken by tragedy and lies, being stitched back together by a miracle. He finally understood. The DNA test hadn't just revealed that Brenda was a liar. It had revealed this. It had revealed a truth, hidden in blood and bone, that was deeper than he could have ever imagined. It had revealed that a hero's legacy was not a medal on a wall. It was in the courage of his 8-year-old great-granddaughter. It had revealed that a house is not a home. He looked at his son, Matthew, who was crying silently. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. "Come on, son," Arthur whispered, putting his arm around his boy. Let's give them some time." He turned, and with his son, he walked out into the hall. He had entered this, a man with one child. He was leaving it, a man with a family. His home was waiting. And for the first time in his life, Arthur Harrison knew it would never be empty again. And that's where we leave Arthur, his son Matthew, and the Miller family. Finally, a true home, built not on lies, but on the courage of an 8-year-old girl. I hope this journey from a cold christening to a warm reunion gave you a chance to drift. What part of the story moved you the most? Was it Emily's courage, or the final, shocking twist of Jack's true lineage? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all and value your feedback. To make sure you don't miss our next story, hitting like and subscribing makes a huge difference. Thanks for spending this time with me.